Hello everyone, and welcome to the Solutions lecture for the E-commerce Purchases Pandas exercise. Let's go ahead and jump to the Jupyter Notebook and start walking through the solutions. Alright, here I am at the notebook for the E-commerce Purchases exercise. Let's go ahead and just walk through the instructions. So first thing you had to do was import pandas. Let's go ahead and import pandas as PD. And then what we want to do is read in the E-commerce Purchases CSV file and set it to a data frame called ecom. So I'm going to say ecom is equal to pd.read underscore CSV, and then I'm going to start typing ecom, and I'm going to use tab autocomplete to find the actual file here. And it's the first one there, e-commerce purchases. And now I'm going to go ahead and check the head of that data frame. And you can do that just by calling the method ecom head. And there we can see we have the head of that data frame. Now we wanted to know how many rows and columns there are. There are a couple ways to do this. For instance, you could just say ecom.columns, and this returns a list of the columns index, so you could actually just check out the length of that if you wanted to, and this will return how many columns you have. And then you could do the same thing for index, and that would tell you how many rows you had. A nice way to do this, however, to get both pieces of information at once, plus a couple other nice pieces of information, is called the info method off of that. And hopefully by looking at this output, that was a nice hint to use the info method. Okay, what is the average purchase price? Let's go ahead and check out the columns one more time. Notice here we have address, slot, AM or PM, and continuing on, we notice that we have finally at the end a purchase price. What we're going to go ahead and do is call that column purchase price, and I'm going to go ahead and do tab autocomplete here. And then I want the average purchase price. So average, in this case, we're talking about mean. And the reason I didn't actually post what is the mean purchase price, because I didn't want to actually give away the method right off the bat. So hopefully you're able to figure that out. And the average purchase price is $50 and about 35 cents. Now we want to know what's the highest and lowest purchase prices. Well, we can do that in a very similar manner by just passing in the column and then calling max and min off of it. So the max purchase price is about $100, and the minimum purchase price is $0. Okay, now we want to know how many people have English, or EN, as their language of choice on the website. Let's go ahead and check out the English column, or the language column, one more time. I'm going to go ahead and say ecom.head, and I'm just going to call the first three columns here, or rows, excuse me. So notice if I go ahead and scroll to the right, I have here the language column. It looks like it has just 2 length strings. So we're looking for how many of these strings are equal to EN. And that means I'm going to do this. I'm going to say ecom of language equals the string EN. This will return a series of Boolean values, falses and trues. And that means what I can do now is go ahead and say ecom of where this is true. So I can say ecom, and now I have basically a subset of the data frame. And I can check that by looking at this index here, and notice that it kind of bounces around. And if I scroll all the way to the right on this data frame, let's go ahead and just call the head of this. So I can scroll down and scroll to the right. Notice here all the languages are EN. So what I want is not the head of this. Since I want to know how many people have English, I can just say count. And this will count the rows. And so I have 1,908 people that have English as their language of choice on the website. And if you wanted this just to be specific for the language column, you could just call language here. And this would actually give you the direct number. All right, let's go ahead and keep on going. Now we want to know how many people have the job title of lawyer. What we're going to go ahead and do is say ecom where job is equal to lawyer, and then pass that in to the ecom data frame, and this returns the subset of the data frame where this is true. And now there's a variety of methods to actually get the rows out of it. You could just get info, and this actually returns how many rows you have, so 30 entries. You can also just do count, and that does the same thing, 30. You can also call index off of this. That returns the index, and then you can call the length of that. And this also returns 30. So quite a few methods to get this actual answer of 30. Go ahead and feel free to use whatever method you prefer. Okay, coming up next, how many people made the purchase during the AM and how many people made the purchase during the PM? And there's a hint here to use value counts. Well, value counts makes this really easy. You actually just pass in the AM or PM column and then say value. Well, let me go ahead and just show you the unique values first. So if we take a look at this column and just put unique, notice we only have PM and AM as values. And that means I can just say value underscore counts. And this will automatically count how many people purchased during the PM and how many people purchased during the AM. Coming up next, we wanted to say what are the 5 most common job titles? Well, value counts actually also makes that very easy. What you can end up doing is call the job column, and you'll notice you get a bunch of jobs back as a series, and then you can call value counts on this column, and then you actually have the counts. And notice value counts actually automatically already sorts from the most popular counts all the way, if you go to the bottom, to the least popular ones. So if we just check out the head of this, for the top 5, here you get the 5 most common job titles: interior and spatial designer, lawyer, purchasing manager, etc. There's a couple other ways to do this, but this is probably the fastest and easiest way to do this. Okay, next up, someone made a purchase that came from lot, quote, 90 space WT. What was the purchase price for this transaction? Let's go ahead and try to find out this lot first. So we're going to kind of break this down step by step. We're going to say ecom of lot equal to, and then 90 space capital WT. If I just run this, I get a series of Boolean values. And I want the row where this is true. So I'm going to go ahead and say ecom of this, do this conditional selection, and now I can see I get the row back where this happened to be true. So if I go ahead and just go over to the purchase price, I should see it, $75.10, or I could just call purchase price off of this data frame. And that will return this, $75.10. Okay. Coming up next, what is the email of the person with the following credit card number? And here's the credit card number itself. What we're going to want to do is a very similar process. We'll say we want ecom credit card is equal to, and then I'm just going to copy and paste this number. And then I'm going to pass this into the ecom data frame and just grab the email column off of it. And I just ran that and it gets me the exact same answer. So bondellan@williams-garza.com. Okay. Now I want to know how many people have American Express as their credit card provider and made a purchase above $95. Again, we're just doing conditional selection, except now we have to remember how to do multiple conditions. I'm going to go ahead and start setting up my data frame. I'll say ecom, and I'm going to pass in the first condition in parentheses, and then use ampersand and pass the second condition in parentheses. Okay, first condition was American Express as their credit card provider, meaning I want ecom CC provider is equal to American Express, and I want ecom of the purchase price to be greater than $95. Okay, if I just run this, I get back the actual rows where this is true. Now remember, I just want the count. So I can go ahead and just say .count off of this, run this, and I get 39. Again, there's lots of different ways you can get the count. You could also say info, then that returns 39 here. You can also use, for instance, .index, and then get the length of this. And that also returns 39. So lots of ways to do this, but the basic idea and what I want you to get down is how to actually do the multiple condition selection. So you need to pass it in parentheses, use and then pass it in parentheses again. Okay, now for the last two hard ones. How many people have a credit card that expires in 2025? So let's go ahead and take a look at the expiration date. So we have CC, EXP, expiration date. If we take a look at this, we have what looks to be a string. But let's go ahead and confirm that it's a string by just asking for the very first object. So if I say iloc dot bracket 0, it returns back the string 02/20. And that means if I actually just want to grab the year, so this credit card expires on 2020, what I'm going to go ahead and do is grab the values of that string, or the elements of that string, that are at index 3 and beyond. So if we look at 0, 1, 2, I want 3 and beyond, or essentially the last two. And now I get a string that is the year. So I'm going to go ahead and take that information and begin to use .apply on it. So I'm going to say .apply lambda. We'll go ahead and call this exp colon exp and then say 3 colon. And then I want this to be equal to 25 because I'm looking for the expiration date of 2025. Let's go ahead and just run this. And notice now I have a series of false and true, so a bunch of Boolean values. Now the reason why this is hard is because you need to figure out how many of these are actually true. There's a couple of different ways you can do this. One very quick way is you can actually just take the sum of this series and it'll return back all the values that are true as a sum. So that's the way it's done in the solutions. Just kind of a neat trick, but that makes it hard. The other way you can do this is by passing this into ecom, getting the rows back where it happens to be true, and then just saying .count. And this will also return back that same number, 1033. Okay, now for the hardest one, which is what are the top 5 most popular email providers and hosts? Gmail.com, Yahoo.com, etc. Let's go ahead and see how we can do this. I'm going to take a look at the email column. And notice here we basically have strings, but what's important to note is that if you take one of these strings, let's go ahead and take one. We'll call this example_email is equal to the very first instance of this. So if I take a look at example email, it's just a string here. If I go ahead and say split on @ then I have a list, and it splits it on @, and I know that the second item in this list, item 1, or the item at index 1, is the domain name, yahoo.com. So what I want to do is use this sort of logic in a lambda expression in order to grab the email provider or the host. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and say ecom email .apply lambda. We take in the email, and then we say email.split at, and then I'm going to grab off of that the value at index 1. So basically I'm just using this logic right here, but I'm putting it into a lambda expression. Then I'm going to say value_count in order to actually count how many there are. Let's go ahead and just show this first. Let me hashtag that out. So this returns a series of all these values as far as the email providers. And what I want to do is figure out the top 5 most popular. So remember, we can just use value counts along with head 5, and this returns the top 5 most popular. So Hotmail, Yahoo, Gmail, Smith, and Williams.com. Okay, hopefully that was challenging for you. If it wasn't and you breezed right through it, even better. But I hope you were able to use your Pandas skills, start getting familiar, and more importantly, see what's actually available for you and the type of questions you can answer quickly and easily with Pandas. So this is your first exercise as far as a formal exercise with Pandas. It might have been challenging, it might have been really tough, but just go through solutions slowly, make sure you can break it down step by step and understand the solutions. Feel free to post any questions you have to the Q&A forums, and I'm happy to help you out as far as explaining the logic of any of this. What might be the most confusing parts of this are the ability to use .apply and then lambda expressions. Go ahead and review lambda expressions in Python if you thought these last two were just extremely hard. Okay, hope you enjoyed that exercise, Coming up next is another pandas exercise to sharpen your skill set even more. Thanks everyone, and I'll see you at the next lecture.